You won't find this topic in any mainstream poker book, solver breakdown, or training series. I've looked. If someone's covered it, I'd genuinely like to know because I haven't seen it. What you're about to hear is unconventional and maybe even controversial because it challenges a core assumption in poker, how we calculate our outs. This doesn't replace standard out counting. It enhances it. It adds a layer of real-world clarity, especially in full-ring games, where textbook theory often breaks down. Not all outs are real. Some are what I call ghost outs, cards that look like they help, but never actually do. Let's define what outs really are and why some of the ones you're counting may not even exist. In poker, the term outs refers to the number of unseen cards that can improve your hand. It's a foundational concept, one that underpins pot odds, hand probabilities, and nearly every mathematical decision at the table. For example, let's say you have two hearts in your hand, and two hearts hit the board. Then by traditional calculation, you have 9 outs, the remaining 9 hearts in the deck that would complete your flush. This is how outs are almost universally taught, from poker books to training videos, including in over 80 videos on our own channel, where we've used this exact model to demonstrate how to align your hand odds with your pot odds to make better decisions. Let's be clear, we are not saying this method is wrong. We are not questioning its accuracy. When used properly, it's mathematically sound and continues to serve as the gold standard for calculating your equity in poker. However, what we're going to do in this video is ask a deeper question. What is the mathematical probability that all of those outs are truly live? In other words, what are the chances that some of them are already in someone else's hand or even folded into the muck? And what if we've been using a model that systematically overestimates our true equity, especially in multi-way pots? This doesn't mean we're abandoning the traditional formula. We'll continue to use it in all our future videos, unless otherwise stated or demonstrated. What we're doing here is providing an optional upgrade for players who want to dig into the deeper probabilities behind what's actually left in the deck and what isn't. We'll be using a few common draw scenarios throughout the video to illustrate this concept. A flush draw on the flop, the classic 9-out situation, a hand like king-queen with overcards to the board, and an open-ended straight draw with 8 traditional outs. Each of these will help us ask the same core question: how many of these outs are actually still in the deck, and how many are already gone? Let's say you're dealt the ace of spades and the 5 of spades in a 9-handed game. You've got a suited hand, and you know that if you flop a flush draw, you'll typically be told you have 9 outs after the flop. But here's the problem. You're assuming all 9 of those outs are live. What if they're not? Let's walk through the math, starting before the flop is ever dealt. You hold the ace of spades and the 5 of spades. That means 11 spades remain somewhere in the deck or in someone's hand. There are 50 unknown cards out of a 52-card deck. You've seen your 2 cards, and that's it. In a full 9-handed game, there are 8 opponents. Each has dealt 2 cards. That's 16 unknown cards now out of play. To determine the probability that a random unknown card is a spade, we would multiply 16, the number of unknown cards, times 11 spades divided by 50 total cards, which equals 3.52. Meaning there are approximately 3.52 spades distributed among your opponent's hands. So instead of having 9 potential flush outs if you flop a spade draw, you likely have only 5.5 outs. Let's say the flop comes, the 7 of spades, the 2 of spades, and the jack of diamonds. Now you have 4 spades visible, the ace of spades and the 5 of spades in your hand, the 7 of spades and the 2 of spades on the board. That leaves 9 theoretical outs. 13 minus 4 equals 9 spades still in the deck. But remember, you already estimated 3.5 are in other players' hands. So, 9 minus 3.5 leaves 5.5 live spade outs. This is the true equity picture. Most players are making pot odds decisions based on 9 outs, when in reality, their actual chance of hitting may be significantly lower. The time to think about your outs isn't just when you flop a draw, it's before you even call pre-flop. If your suited hand is already missing 3+ of its key outs, it may not be worth playing at all. This is why we stress that when selecting your starting hands, one of the key considerations should be, how many ways do I have to win? If you're entirely dependent on one narrow outcome, like hitting a flush and the math tells you many of those outs are likely gone, you should strongly consider opting out of that hand. Let's say you're holding the king of clubs and the queen of diamonds on the button. The pot folds around, and you're considering a raise. Many players value this hand because of its overcard potential. If the flop comes low, you have 2 overcards. But here's the question, what's the probability that at least one king or queen is already in someone else's hand? There are 4 kings and 4 queens in a deck. You're holding one of each. That leaves 3 kings and 3 queens for a total of 6 outs. There are 50 unknown cards, and in a 9-handed game, 16 of those 50 cards are in your opponent's hands. So what's the average number of your overcards they hold? To find out, we divide 6 by 50, which equals 12%. Then multiply 16, total number of unseen cards in opponent's hands, times 12%, and you get 1.92. On average, nearly 2 of your 6 overcard outs are already in opponent's hands before the flop is even dealt. That means you may only have 4 outs, not 6. Your equity is overestimated if you assume all 6 are live. Overcard value is often overstated in multi-way pots, especially in full-ring games. If you're basing decisions on your 6 outs to top pair, just remember, you might only have 4 or fewer. Knowing how many of your key cards are likely gone can help you avoid tricky situations where your equity just isn't what it seems. You're holding the Jack of Clubs and the 10 of Clubs, and the flop comes the Queen of Diamonds, 9 of Spades, and the 4 of Hearts. That gives you an open-ended straight draw. You can hit a straight with either a king or an 8. For kings plus 4 8s equals 8 outs. You're not holding any of them, so you count all 8 as live, but that's the traditional approach. Now, let's bring in probability. At this point, there are 16 unknown cards in opponents' hands, 8 players holding 2 cards each. There are 50 unseen cards in total. Let's calculate the probability that some of your 8 outs are already in their hands. Step 1. Probability that a given card is an out. There are 8 outs remaining in the 50-card unseen deck. Probability any one card is an out equals 8 divided by 50 for 16%. Step 2. Expected number of outs in opponent's hands. Multiply that by the 16 cards in opponent's hands. That would be 16 by 0.16, which equals 2.56 of your outs, potentially in opponent's hands. So instead of having 8 live outs, you may have only 5.5 outs. So, why hasn't this angle been widely discussed? Why is this the first time you are actually seeing that mathematically some of your outs may be ghost? There are a few reasons. 1. Simplicity. Traditional poker training favors clean, teachable concepts. You have 9 outs is easier to teach than you have 9 theoretical outs, minus a floating variable based on opponent distribution. Simplicity wins in beginner strategy, and that's okay. 2. Lack of real-time information. At the table, you don't get to peek into folded hands or see what players mucked. So most players and teachers work with the idea, if it's not visible, it's live. That's the default assumption. But statistically, that assumption is flawed. 3. The myth of availability. Most players operate under the unconscious belief that unknown equals available. But in a full ring game, 16 of the 50 unseen cards are already in play. And that means, by default, some of your outs are already gone. You just don't know it yet. And finally, this isn't a criticism, it's a refinement. We're not here to overthrow decades of poker wisdom. The traditional method of counting outs works, especially for practical, at-the-table decisions. But if you want to take your game to the next level, you also need to know its limitations, and how probability quietly works against you in ways most players never consider. So now that you know some of your outs may not be live at all, what should you actually do with this information? Let's break it down. Use ghost out math as a mental adjustment, not a replacement. You don't need to abandon traditional poker math. It's clean. It's functional. It's the basis for virtually every poker tool, book, and solver in existence. But now you know, it's a best-case scenario model. Ghost outs help you adjust your expectations. When a draw seems close, this math gives you a reason to fold instead of chase. It keeps you grounded in reality when the pot odds say barely call. A 20% chance might really be 13%. A 9-out draw might be 6 or even less. You're not folding because the draw is bad. You're folding because the real equity isn't what it appears. And apply it most when the margins are thin. You don't need to run ghost out calculations every hand. But in the gray zones, where you're unsure whether to call, fold, or semi-bluff, this added layer of probability can keep you from lighting money on fire. Especially in larger games, 9-handed versus 6-handed, where more cards are dealt pre-flop and the chance of ghost outs increases. When you're out of position and drawing to the turn. When your implied odds depend on hitting one of just a few specific cards. Let it influence your pre-flop decisions if you know your flush draw is rarely clean. If you understand that your overcards are often duplicated, then it should influence your hand selection before the flop. Ask yourself, how many ways do I have to win? What happens if the only way I win is by hitting a card that's already gone? That question alone can save you hundreds of dollars over time. Ghost outs won't change the fundamentals, but they will change the finesse. This is a tool for players who want to think one level deeper. Because if you're only ever seeing 9 outs, you're missing the reality behind the curtain. Just because a card isn't visible doesn't mean it's live. The assumption that all your outs are available is a simplification, one that helps teach the game, but one that can overstate your actual equity in real time. You don't need to become a spreadsheet warrior at the table, but if you understand how likely it is that some of your outs are already gone, you'll make sharper, more accurate decisions, especially in those marginal spots where poker is truly won and lost. Your 9 outs might really be 5.5. Your 6 outs might really be 3.2. And your opponent might already be holding the card you're praying for. If you're serious about elevating your game, start thinking beyond the basics. Start questioning the assumptions. Start seeing the ghosts in the deck. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if this video made you think differently. The full article and probability charts are available now at pokerrailbird.com. And remember, it's not about the cards. It's about the decisions. I'm Terry Wood, and thanks for watching. As always, good luck, and we'll see you at the tables.